Hey everyone! Did you know that for most of human history, people survived by hunting animals and gathering wild plants? That's how Homo sapiens lived for tens of thousands of years, just moving from place to place, finding food wherever they could. But then, around 12,000 years ago, something big happened. Some groups started growing their own food instead of just collecting it from nature. This was the beginning of farming, and it marked the start of the Neolithic Age. This change was huge. It didn't just mean planting crops, it changed everything about how people lived. Land became super important because people needed it to grow food. People started settling down in one place instead of moving around. They began working together differently, creating new ways to share food and other things. Even their beliefs started to change. Some groups didn't start farming though. Maybe their land wasn't good for it, or maybe they just liked their old way of life better. But the ones who did farm saw their populations grow and started doing different kinds of jobs. This helped create early villages and towns. This big change is called the Neolithic Revolution, and it was one of the most important steps in human history. What's interesting is that farming didn't start in just one place. It happened in many parts of the world at different times. People in the Near East, China, Sub-Saharan Africa, Mesoamerica, and South America all started farming on their own. Different places grew different crops. In the Near East, it was wheat and barley. In China, they grew millet and rice. In Mesoamerica, people grew squash and later maize, or corn. These plants had been growing wild for a long time before people started planting them on purpose. Farming helped feed more people, which meant more people could live together in one place. That changed how people lived and worked together. So why did people start farming? We're not totally sure, but one reason might be the end of the last ice age, about 12,000 years ago. When the climate changed, animals moved around differently, and food might have gotten harder to find. People started noticing that if they dropped seeds, new plants would grow. Over time, they learned how to grow those plants on purpose, which led to farming. Some of the first farming communities appeared in places like Mesopotamia, southern Turkey, and Israel, an area we now call the Fertile Crescent. This land was great for growing crops. People there started by planting wild grasses that became wheat and barley. Later they added peas, lentils, olives, carrots, and dates. In China, people near the Yangtze and Yellow Rivers grew rice, millet, and soybeans. In Africa, near what is now Sudan, people grew sorghum and later added peanuts and sesame. In Mexico, people started farming maize and later added beans, squash, and peppers. In the Andes Mountains, people began growing potatoes about 5,000 years ago. Once people figured out how to farm, the idea spread. Wheat farming moved into Europe. Rice spread across East Asia, and maize farming reached other parts of the Americas. People shared their knowledge and crops with others, and farming kept growing. Farming didn't just change how people lived, it changed the plants too. Wild wheat and barley had thick husks that were hard to eat. But over time, people picked the ones with softer husks and more seeds. This made the plants better for eating and easier to harvest. That's how people slowly changed plants to suit their needs. It's called domestication. People also domesticated animals. They picked animals that were calm, strong, and easy to feed. In the Near East, they raised sheep and goats. In South Asia, it was chickens. In Central Asia, horses. In Peru, people raised llamas. These animals weren't just for food. They helped with carrying loads, farming, and more. Even though farming had a lot of benefits, not everyone chose to farm. For example, the indigenous people of Australia lived in places that could support farming. They even knew about farming from nearby groups in New Guinea. But they kept their hunter-gatherer lifestyle because it worked well for them. That shows how people made different choices based on where they lived and what made sense for them. Today it seems normal, but long ago it was a huge change. Farming didn't just change how people got food. It changed how people lived. But not everyone wanted to become farmers right away. For example, the indigenous people of Australia knew about farming from nearby places like New Guinea, but they stuck with hunting and gathering because it worked well for them. That might seem odd now because so much of our world depends on farming. But switching to farming wasn't always better. It often meant more work. Researchers found that hunter-gatherers only needed about 20 hours a week to find food. That gave them time to rest, tell stories, and be creative. Early farmers had to work over 30 hours a week just to grow enough food. Women especially had to do more physical work than before. Farming also brought new problems. When people started living in bigger groups, diseases spread more easily. Waste from people and animals collected in one place, and without modern toilets or clean water that caused illness. Farmers had to worry a lot about the weather. If there was too much or too little rain, their crops could fail. Unlike hunter-gatherers, they couldn't just move to a new place. Their diets changed too. Hunter-gatherers ate lots of different plants and animals. But farmers mostly ate just one or two main crops like wheat or rice. That made it harder to get all the nutrients they needed. Even though they had animals, early farmers didn't eat as much meat as hunter-gatherers. Their goal was to have enough to eat, not to enjoy lots of different foods. Still, farming had big benefits. It allowed more people to live in one place. That meant people could start doing other jobs, like making tools, trading goods, or leading religious ceremonies. This helped communities become more organized and complex. As these groups grew, life changed in ways we still see today. Before farming, most people shared everything and were treated equally. But with farming, some people grew more food and got more land. Land became something valuable that could be passed down. Soon there were people who had more and people who had less. Some people didn't have to farm anymore. They became traders, artists, or leaders. Those who had more money or land often became powerful. They could even start armies or make rules. But people without money had to work hard and sometimes lived in poverty or even became servants. Farming led to the creation of different social classes. Farming also changed the roles of men and women. In hunter-gatherer groups, both men and women helped with survival. Men usually hunted and women gathered. But on farms, men often did the heavy fieldwork, especially when tools like plows were used. Women stayed closer to home, doing things like cooking, weaving, and taking care of kids. Over time, men gained more power in public life, while women's roles were mostly in the home. But women still did a lot of hard work. Grinding grain took hours and was tough on the body. Spinning thread and weaving cloth also took a lot of time. And they still had to take care of kids and prepare food. Religion changed too. Some people became priests or priestesses, claiming they could understand what the gods wanted. They led rituals, built temples, and became powerful. These new religions focused on farming themes like harvest and fertility. Earlier beliefs saw spirits in nature, but now people believed in gods who controlled things like rain and crops. About 9,000 years ago, some farming villages became towns. One famous town is Çatalhöyük in today's Turkey. It lasted for over 1,000 years and may have had 6,000 people. The houses were built close together with no streets. People entered from the rooftops, which helped with protection. The homes had art, including animal paintings and symbols like a woman giving birth to a bull. Bulls seemed to be important in their religion. The people of Çatalhöyük did more than farm. They hunted, gathered, and traded. They grew wheat and barley and raised cattle. They may have used irrigation to water crops. They also gathered wild foods like berries. One of their most important trade items was obsidian, a shiny black rock used for tools. They traded it with places as far away as Syria and Cyprus. South of there, near the Jordan River, was Jericho, one of the oldest cities in the world. Instead of rooftop homes, it had stone walls and a big tower for defense. It started around 8300 BCE. Other early places like Ain Ghasal and Nahal Hemar also played important roles in early human history. All these towns are part of what archaeologists call the Nakian culture. Many of these places existed even before farming really started. The land was full of wild plants and animals, which made it easier to settle down. Farming came later and built on the rich resources already there. In South Asia, the earliest farming was at Mehrgarh, in what is now Pakistan. By 7000 BCE, people grew barley and raised animals like goats and sheep. Later, they started growing cotton. They built homes out of mud bricks and traded things like shiny blue stones and seashells with faraway places. In China, farming started near the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, around 8000 BCE. People in the north grew millet, and in the south they grew rice. These rivers gave them good soil, fresh water, and lots of fish. They also raised pigs and dogs and kept hunting and gathering. They made pottery and used hemp to make string. Villages like Pengtushan and Bashadang in China show early rice farming. Homes there were partly underground or built on raised platforms, and they had ditches to control water. Farming didn't only happen in one place. In Mexico, people grew peppers and squash by 6500 BCE. In the Andes, they grew potatoes and manioc by 3000 BCE. In New Guinea, people farmed taro by 7000 BCE. Farming started in Europe's Danube Valley around 6000 BCE, and in Central Africa, people farmed yams and later millet and sorghum. All over the world, people learned how to grow food and live in one place. Farming brought many challenges, but it also helped build the world we live in today: towns, cities, trade, governments, and more.